Gives Trevor on a slide. Cross court to Ingles. Chests it up to Exum. Dante with 4 on the clock. Finds Hayward. Slides through the lane. Beautiful pass to Kanter for the layup and the foul. He'll buy it. He'll get one free. G-Time with a dime.
It is trade deadline day. What are we about to embark upon? Where do the Jazz stand? What about the rest of the league? We'll break it all down for you in the 8:30 in the morning edition of Trade Deadline Show. It's all coming up right now on tip-off. Pow. Hope you're doing great. I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. So glad to be with you this morning and bringing you an exciting day of trade deadline coverage. We'll do this at our regular tip-off via the Google Hangout, which if you're listening audio version has no difference to you at all. Someone let me know. I tried to keep the audio as good yesterday as I did on the road. Tell me if that worked or not. And then we'll spreecast today at 12:30 is the plan for that. Final 30 minutes up to the deadline, then probably 30 minutes of evaluation on the backside is what the thought is. Answer your questions during that as well and get you updated. I was considering doing a 10 a.m., but I think that's overkill. So lots of stuff out there for you. When you're done with this, the ESPN NBA Lockdown with Kevin Pelton, Chad Ford, and all those guys was really good, probably worth taking a listen to. You can follow us on Facebook at David Locke and Locked On Sports. You can follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sports. And you can check us out on the Google Plus community is really, really good. They did a great job yesterday to catch stuff. And as I said, I think that's where you put your trade through the trade machine, put it up on the Google Plus community, let people react and comment on it and see what they have to say. That's what that whole thing's about, is that kind of conversation. So please do that, be a part of that at the Locked On Sports Google Plus community. The other thing, by the way, is if you could give us 5 stars on iTunes or on Stitcher, it'd be greatly helpful. Let's dig into it. Let's get started off. We always do it the same way. We do the NBA 5, then we dig deep on the Jazz. It'll all kind of gel together in different ways.
This is Dante, and you are Locked On Jazz.
Thank you, Dante. So it's interesting right now because as we sit here at 8:35 Mountain with the trade deadline 4 hours and 25 minutes away, nothing seems to be vibing. Nothing seems to really be coming together. For example, on all the Goran Dragic talk, the teams that can make a deal for Dragic that makes sense for Dragic are teams that Sacramento doesn't, but he doesn't want to go there. Boston can probably pull it off, but I'm not sure it makes sense for Boston with Marcus Smart as their kind of one really good young piece to the puzzle right now. I'm not sure. The Lakers don't have anything to offer. The Knicks don't have anything to offer. Houston can probably put together a package, but Dragic supposedly doesn't want to go to Houston. Lon Babby, the agent, has told Daryl Morey numerous times, no deal. We're not coming back. We don't have that interest. So on the first domino that seems to be in place here, Goran Dragic doesn't seem to have the spots that match, and I wonder if Lon Babby, the agent, may have overplayed his hand a little bit. It'll be curious to see how this plays out. And all of this is about is getting the 5th year of money. It also can be about being the primary ball handler and all these other things we're talking about and having this opportunity, but the truth is, it's about getting traded to a team that has the 5th year. The collective bargaining agreement was made in a way that the team that is keeping its own player has such an advantage by being able, in shorter deals, being able to offer the extra 5th year. It's 20% more, plus the money increasing, that what's happening with Reggie Jackson, what's happening with Enes Kanter, what's happening with Goran Dragic, and Jackson and Kanter are interesting because they're the restricted free agent. They want to get to a team that will use those bird rights. If nobody uses the bird rights, then the market is already deflated for Dragic, for Jackson, and for Kanter, and that's the play here. So as much as Sacramento's the logic, if Goran doesn't want to stay in Sacramento as a free agent, then he doesn't want to go there in a trade because of the fact that then when he gets signed by the Lakers or the Knicks or whomever else, they can't give him the bird rights. They can't give him the 5th year. They can only give him the cap space. So this is all being driven off the new collective bargaining agreement, which makes it advantageous to get to a team that can use the bird rights in that 5th year on the deal. All right, so that's the Dragic stuff doesn't seem to line up, which then moves us to Reggie Jackson, is probably the second pin that falls in all of this. And the one that does make sense is Reggie Jackson and Kendrick Perkins for Brook Lopez and a few other pieces have to get tossed into that mix along the way. And we'll see how that plays out. But that one seems to make some sense. For Brooklyn, you get rid of a big money. If you like Reggie Jackson, you believe you're getting a piece that's going to begin to help rebuild your future. You start trying to you get that huge contract off your books. And Oklahoma City is under tremendous pressure to do something with the Kevin Durant contract where it is, with the Russell Westbrook situation, with them trying to get in to the playoffs. I think it's interesting. I'm not totally convinced it's the right move for OKC. I think it's very risky for OKC in the sense that they're going to have to meld somebody else into a team that right now, to me, when I watch them play, has no chemistry. To me, they lost all of their chemistry when Durant went out and suddenly became the first option. Westbrook became the first option on that team. Denver, very interesting. Aaron Aflalo is floating out there. Ty Lawson is floating out there. Wilson Chandler's a huge part of it. Portland has got to make a play here. A little bit on the same level, by the way, as what we were talking about with the likes of Oklahoma City is, remember, LaMarcus Aldridge is a free agent, and everyone thinks he's re-signing, but you never know. And there have been some big moves already in the West. So I think when you start to look at this, Portland's got to make some sort of move. How they make the move and what they do to make the move is not entirely clear to me. I think another big might help them out a large amount. I think someone even on a Thaddeus Young type could be good as another Minnesota play. Minnesota and Denver are going to get involved here at a pretty heavy level at some point. And there's going to be deals done. It's as much as I'm saying things don't completely match up right now. There's some point, I think, where what's about to happen in this is teams that have been working on different trades, different deals, trying to make things work, are going to say, okay, that's enough. It's not coming together. We're moving to the next spot, and that's where the movement is going to happen. In the Denver sense of things, Ty Lawson is an interesting play for someone, but he's got $12 million next year and $13 million the year after. It's why Denver would probably like to move him. Wilson Chandler has a team option at $7 million next year. To me, is appealing because I think he's a good value at $7 million if you want him, depending on the market. Aaron Aflalo is basically a free agent at the end of the season. He has a player option at $7 million, so that becomes a little bit more difficult to get that deal done. And I was listening to Spence yesterday, who kind of mentioned him as a possibility, and I'm not sure that works for the Jazz because I'm not sure that they want to go pay Aaron Aflalo what they probably have to in the open market, and he's gonna demand. Minnesota, Kevin Martin's the risk there. He's got 2 years, $7 million. Thaddeus Young has $9 million player option next year. He might just take that so he could become a free agent in coming up in the next big year. And also keep an eye on Chase Budinger. He's a player that someone could add in the process. So there's just a lot of movement. If you look at the Western Conference, the Clippers have very little to play with and move, but feel like they have to do something. Portland's got to do something. And Dallas, let's make sure we understand what Dallas did yesterday. Dallas changed the landscape of the West a little bit. Back up. I didn't like the Rajon Rondo trade. But if you told me the Rajon Rondo trade was Rajon Rondo and Amari Stoudemire from Brandon Wright, then I might have liked it a little bit. Right? That's really what that trade has become. I didn't like that trade for two reasons. One, because when Tyson Chandler sprains an ankle, they don't have a backup, which they're dealing with right now, and I think that's going to be a real problem. I didn't like it, number two, because they lost the effectiveness of Brandon Wright. And three, I didn't like it because Rajon Rondo's inefficient offensively. All right, the Tyson Chandler issue is still there. The Wright issue has been solved by having Amari Stoudemire. And Rondo's offensive problems with having a Wright-type player back might be negated a little bit, and their defensive uptick since they've got Rajon Rondo's big. And the Warriors are great, The Warriors can win a title. Memphis can win a title. San Antonio can win a title. Oklahoma City, frankly, can still win a title, though they're messed. Dallas can win a title the way they're built. What's Houston going to do? What's Portland going to do? What are the Clippers going to do? Those are three major pieces. Over in the Eastern Conference, Milwaukee's incredibly active and involved in numerous things and seems to be ready to make a deal to try to improve themselves a little bit. On the top, I think Cleveland's done. They've done their deal. Atlanta doesn't seem to want to mess with chemistry. Chicago probably needs to do something that's been very, very quiet. I'm not sure what they can do with their roster the way it's formed. But they seem like they need a jolt. Washington and Toronto. Toronto could move Terrence Ross a little bit. I kind of like him. I mean, but he's got a real softness to him that I think is unappealing. And I'm not sure how Washington can, but and then Milwaukee, those are the six that really have to make some sort of a push. All right, that is your NBA 5. Let's dig it in a little bit more specifically to the world of your Utah Jazz. Where's my Enes cut? There it is. There's Enes.
Hi, everybody. This is Enes Kanter. I want to hear from you. Call 801-200-3738 and ask me a question. That is 801-200-3738 to ask me a question.
Let me take 1 second before we dig into trade deadline stuff on Enes. Listening to the radio, talking to people, I do feel like one aspect of things has gone off the rails a little bit on Enes. What is a player's number one goal? Let me rephrase that. What is all of our number one goal? I will speak personally on this one. I want to be great. And I want to work for a place that allows me to use my brain, use my creativity, allows me to try to be great. The Utah Jazz have been so fabulous to me in allowing me to do this podcast, try the social networking things, do things differently, make mistakes, be involved in corporate conversations I have no business to be just doing live in my brain. I feel as though the environment that I work in today allows me to be the best I can possibly be. Yeah, now, is that, whether that's any good or not, is up for you to decide. But I wake up every day believing that my employer is allowing me to be as good as I can be. I have nothing. I have incredible support. I have great people and bosses. I have nothing that hinders my ability to use any talent that I might have been given in life. If you're in marketing, if you're in radio, if you're an athlete, if you have a special skill, if you're good at something, all you want to do in this brief time in life is use it and maximize it, right? That's all you want. So when Goran Dragic is talking about a trade, why? Because the ball's not in his hands, because he doesn't, it's selfish. Absolutely it's selfish. But that's why he's great. That's why last year he was a top 20 player in the NBA. And he wants to be able to become a top 20 player in the NBA again, and he doesn't believe that with Eric Bledsoe there, he can do that. Okay. That actually makes Enes Kanter asking for a trade is naive, immature, and probably inappropriate, and probably not even very smart. But it all stems back to the idea that he wants to be able to use his talents. It's after a game. He didn't play as much as he wanted. He was pissed. He knows the trade deadline's coming. I'm done. Let me go somewhere where I can use my talents. He feels as though, probably incorrectly, by the way, that the situation he's in is hindering his ability to use all of his skills. Okay? I think he's wrong. I think he's disastrously wrong. I think he's clearly got people around him that have been feeding this into his head, and it's not good for him. But I get it, and you do too. If you're really honest about it, if Enes takes the floor on Friday, and you really think about what he asked for when he said, I want to be traded, you do too. You've worked somewhere in your life where you feel as though you weren't being able to maximize your skills. And what did you want? You wanted another place to do it. You might have even been wrong. That's all Enes did. It's not as terrible and ridiculous as everyone makes it sound. He's 22, he's young, it was immature, it was dumb. I got it. I mean, if I saw Enes right now, I know him pretty well. I'd be like, dude, what the were you doing? And if we talked about it for a while, we could probably make sense out of it. And maybe we will. Maybe next week he and I will sit down and do an interview and see if he can express himself. But if you're Enes, maybe you feel as though Favors and Gobert are prohibiting you. Now, we could walk through, I could bore you to death, we could walk through 30 teams in the NBA, and I got a hard time finding a better circumstance for Enes. That's where I find the ignorance of the comment. Right? I mean, really, if you start on the top of the NBA standings, you're pretty darn certain that none of those teams are going to give him much more playing time than a team that's on pace to win about 25 games right now, right? I mean, that's the lunacy of the comment, is that this is probably the best situation for him. He's playing 28 minutes a night. He's not at the point where he's helping teams win a great deal. And so if you even take like Minnesota, well, Pekovic's on that roster. He's not getting a lot more time than that. The Lakers, he probably would get the ball and get a bunch of time, and that might be a better circumstance for him, and that's maybe all he can think about right now. In Sacramento, with the DeMarcus Cousins, that's not a better situation for him. Phoenix, Alex Len is probably their primary center. I mean, let's, frankly, Enes Kanter as a player is a good rebounding, scoring big man who's probably really a center with occasional outside shooting abilities that have totally disappeared recently, and in turn has and doesn't protect the rim at all. So, like, who is that in this league? And so, no, if I look around the league, there aren't, like, is he getting a better situation in Detroit, who's got 21 wins? No. In Indiana, no. In New York, maybe. They're awful. In Philadelphia, maybe he gets the ball more. Okay, so there's 3 or 4 teams in Orlando where they have Vukovic? Probably not. I mean, so there's an absolute lunacy to the reality check of who you are as a player, but that's what most players have. So I just want to make sure that gets across. Now, will the Jazz make a move at the trade deadline? I think we'll see a move by 1 o'clock today. Here's why that's not going to happen. I think it will happen, but here's why it's not going to happen. I think if you look at the trade pieces the Jazz have, whether it's a Enes Kanter, a Steve Novak, even a Trevor Booker, I think that's probably it on the major pieces. Most of these teams have another option that might be there first. So, for example, it's sounding more and more like there's a real chance Brook Lopez goes to Oklahoma City for Reggie Jackson and Kendrick Perkins. Okay, well, at Oklahoma City we've heard about. Like, would the Jazz have done, I don't know this, but would the Jazz have done Perry Jones for Enes Kanter on a developmental element? Would have they done a Jeremy Lamb for an Enes Kanter? And Kendrick Perkins has to come in that deal to make the money work. Well, now Kendrick Perkins goes to the Brook Lopez deal. That's done. Right? That's done. Milwaukee, we keep hearing about. The word I have on Ilyasova, by the way, is that, that some of those injuries are probably more significant, and maybe that's not the guy you want with the 3 years left on that deal. But, that's a possibility. So Milwaukee, we keep hearing that name. I don't know if it's true, and whatever the package is. But Milwaukee also has a chance to go do a deal with a bunch of other teams that we could look at, whether it's even a Thaddeus Young or where, frankly, they probably get a bigger push on the playoff push than getting Enes Kanter right now. Kanter's probably the second choice, maybe the third. So when you start to look at those things, I think there's a chance that the Jazz could get left out of get not invited to the prom. I think right now the Jazz probably have a lot of half-hearted prom invitations. Hey, will you be my prom date if Johnny can't go, or if Susie can't go, depending on I don't really know the sex of the Jazz in that conversation. But hey, we lost in the Supreme Court, so. In Utah, we're one. The most conservative states are now the most progressive in this whacked-out world that we live in. All right, sorry for the political commentary of how the world has worked there. Sorry, I have so many jokes on that. I could just keep going. So I think that's the possibility. Steve Novak, I do think is a possibility. It could really help a playoff team. If I'm a playoff team, you're just trying to find a way to get 1 or 2 more wins somewhere along the way. I think Novak can win you a game between now and the end of the year and probably win you 1 out of 7 in the playoffs on the right night. I'm going to get Steve Novak if I'm a playoff team. And then he's got another year on his deal. The Jazz probably willing to do that. Let's clear that space. It hasn't worked out the way we wanted. Okay, let's do it. The Jazz didn't really give up much of anything to get him, but that's a 12:30 phone call. Hey, by the way, everything else is dried up. Can we do that Novak deal? Trevor Booker probably isn't on the top of people's list right now, though it's a nice contract. I mean, if you're a team, you get him and you like him, you keep him. If you get some good other free agent opportunities, you don't have to sign him. It's a well-done contract by the Jazz. Well enough done, you might not want to move him. And he's a nice player. But on the other end, if you're Portland and you think Trevor Booker is noticeably better than Thomas Robinson, okay, let's go. And you're going to move a first-round pick for that. You probably are searching for Thaddeus Young. You're probably searching for some other possibilities along the way. And if it doesn't come together, you call the Jazz at the last second and say, hey, all right, we'll do this. All these deals have been talked about. The Jazz know that all these possibilities, but I think they're the second choice on most of the deals. From the standpoint that at this point, let's break down the Kanter thing for a second. If you're trying to acquire Enes Kanter right now, do you think that Enes Kanter helps you make the playoffs? Like, for which of the 14 teams that are battling for the playoffs does Enes Kanter improve their chances of making the playoffs? Like, if you're the Warriors? Nope. If you're the Grizzlies? Nope. If you're, right? Like, am I wrong on this? Walk down the list. If you're the Clippers? Not really sure maybe, but they have so little to trade. Doc Rivers has just boxed them into a corner. If you're Portland, Myers Leonard's as good, if not better, than Enes the way Myers Leonard is playing recently. Walk it down. Just walk it. Just walk the teams. If you're Oklahoma City, maybe. I mean, Oklahoma City's pretty thin up there with Nick Collison getting slow now, but maybe. But frankly, the Warriors are interesting and Oklahoma City's interesting because to me, the Enes Kanter move for those two teams, if they were to acquire Enes Kanter, what they're really doing is sending you, and I haven't looked at the math on this one, they're sending you Kendrick Perkins and a player and maybe a pick to get under the luxury tax. The Warriors are probably sending you David Lee, you're sending a bunch of other stuff, a 2019 pick just to get under the under the luxury tax for next year with Draymond when they max out Draymond Green. And so actually at that point, Enes Kanter is just a salary piece that gets moved to allow the Jazz to bring back in more money. I'm not even sure they're looking at Enes Kanter as a player. This, by the way, is Max Ergel's worst nightmare. Like, you screw the pooch big time on this one. When Enes Kanter gets moved as a salary cap piece so that we can acquire another draft pick, and we're using his $7 million, basically we're getting expirings back. So what we're deciding is, okay, we're using his salary cap next year for other assets because we weren't going to match his contract. In the meantime, we got ourselves another mid to late first round draft pick, and Enes now goes to a team that's no interest in re-signing him. He goes out on the market. Woo! Oops. Now, it doesn't have anything to do with the trade demand. Jazz might have just done that anyway. The disappointing thing here, obviously, is this is a third pick of an NBA draft that we're suddenly talking about as being moved as a salary cap move, right? Like, those are the possibilities. There's also the real chance, I've said it a number of times, Enes could be anywhere from Zach Randolph, Carl Landry, or Drew Gooden. And what are those three players? High level, low force, post force, power forward. Okay? And Zach Randolph. Third big that comes off the bench that you can run the offense through at times, and at one point in his career was a go-to guy in the fourth quarter in Houston who on second team bigs really is a pretty good player. Or third, a guy who plays on 12 teams in 13 years because he simply never helps you win. Those are the three choices on Enes Kanter of where he's going to be. And to some extent, you have to make that decision if you're the Jazz. If you think he's Zach Randolph, you're holding on to him. If you think he's Carl Landry and he's going to get offered $10 million in the offseason, you're not matching it. And if you think he's Drew Gooden, you're certainly not. The question to me is whether the market will play tonight in a way in which Enes gets moved. I think the likelihood is something happens today. That's just my guess. All right, let's quickly go to the questions. Gabriel, do you think the Jazz will pursue Chris Middleton at all, whether it's through free agency this summer or trade today? He's tall enough at the shooting guard to switch everything on defense and is knockdown three-point shooter, 42.3%. There's a Chris Middleton love affair going on that I think is happening because of some bloggers and some and possibly some reporters. Somebody needs to mute their mic who just Fritz, thank you. I get nervous. I like Chris Middleton because he shares my birthday. I get nervous a little bit when we start overvaluing second-round draft picks and thinking that they're going to be the next big thing. Now, in fairness, that's Wesley Matthews, right? And on Chris Middleton's sense, that there's a pretty good argument here is that now over 753s. 753s is kind of the number by which your three-point shooting becomes legit. And he's at 500 and he's at 40%. So in that sense, I do think Chris Middleton is pretty legit. And maybe was just a miss, right? Just out of Texas A&M. After 3 years at Texas A&M, just people missed. Happens rarely. I think there was a lot of turmoil around Texas A&M, so maybe we have to look back and say maybe he's just Wesley Matthewsing it, where he just learned how to shoot, right? He was a 31% shooter in Detroit. He's been 42 in Milwaukee the last 2 years. So I think you'd look into him. I like him. I'm not, I guess my point is I'm not as in love with him as some others, though. Actually, I think if I remember correctly, if you go look at my Locke offensive ratings, and I don't remember the last time I updated it. I don't think I had all the numbers, but my memory is he comes out very well on it. I'm not sure I probably should update this today so I can quickly put together analysis pieces on trades. But Middleton is a 17.4, which is a high-level starter. So everything on my numbers indicate good things on him. So, yeah, I would say that's a possibility. Maybe my nervousness should probably go away. From what I've noticed, Trey Burke seems to get in rhythm easier when Favors and Gobert are on the floor. Do you think that has more to do with Gobert's lack of offense or Kanter's unwillingness to pass? I don't even know if that's accurate, would be my first question. I have no idea if that's accurate. So it's hard for me. You guys know me well enough. I am not one who answers a question and without knowing if the premise is true. And so, Skylar, I'm sorry. Kanter doesn't do anything to make his teammates better, right? Trevor Booker doesn't either, by the way. And let's do a little exercise here for a second. Let's back off the beating up of Enes Kanter for a second. Let's do a little exercise here for a second. Let's play here. Let's go play together. I have no idea what I'm about to find. So give me a second. We're going to go on a little journey here. We're going to go look and see what the Jazz over the last 25 games. Is that fair? 30? How long do we want? Somebody in the chat room. Give me a game. 20 games, 25 games, 30 games. What the Jazz are. Should we do 20 games? Let's see. We're at the All-Star break. 20 games would take us back to Rudy's explosion happens on December 14th. So that would take us to about 30 games. Here, we'll play. We'll do multiple little playing here. Let's take a look at the Utah Jazz with Enes Kanter on and off the floor over the last period of time and make sure that we're actually being fair in all this analysis that we're giving on a guy on what could be his final day with the organization. Or it could not, or it could be here forever. All right, so on the season, let's play around here for a second. You guys can see these numbers as well. On the season, Enes Kanter, when Enes is on the bench, our defense is a 104, and when he's on the court, it's a 108. That's terrible, right? However, our offense is better and overall. Now, let's change this. Let's go look at the last 15 games. Is that fair? We'll do 15 and 25. Right? So the season is 53 games long. We'll split it into kind of thirds. Wait a sec. Over the last 15 games, when Enes Kanter is on the bench, our defensive rating is a 108, and when he's on the floor, it's a 101.5. What? What? That's contrary to everything I've heard in the last week of conversation. How's that possible? Let's go to the next. Oh, I can't do. I cannot do a 25 game split, so I have to do a little math here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. 25 is the last game of the road trip. It's against Memphis. This is like Rudy Gobert. This is the Rudy Gobert explosion of greatness. Oh, I have multiple splits going here. There we go. All right, so this is the Rudy Gobert explosion of greatness, really, from this Memphis game on, where this is taking place. And in that time period, with over the last, Kanter misses 4 of those games, the Jazz defensive rating with Kanter on the floor is a 99.9, and with Kanter on the bench is a 104.3. What? So as the Jazz have progressed this year, and they've understood the defensive systems, and they've learned how to play, Enes Kanter has learned this too, and the Jazz have become better defensively? How does that work? What about Rudy Gobert? What about Rudy Gobert? Let's do the same thing for Rudy and see what happens. And see whether or not. The Jazz are 5 points better per 100 possessions defensively with Enes Kanter on the floor over the last 25 games than with Rudy Gobert. 104.3 to 99.3. How does that? That's contrary to everything that anybody has said all year. And of course, as we're live, I want to work. Search. Find me Rudy Gobert. Impatience is a wonderful thing. Site is also, as you've learned, is a back site around that most people don't have access to. That is a little different. All right, so the Rudy Gobert doesn't want to load up. Give me 1 second. I'll try to see if I can find it to load up, or I should actually have patience. In the meantime, I'll ask another question. Did Rodney Hood delete his Twitter account? I can't find anymore. I've always had a hard time finding his Twitter account. I have no idea if he deleted it or not. So I have not. With the salary cap about to increase 50%, is there a good chance Enes Kanter gets 13 to 14 million this summer? No, because the salary cap doesn't increase this summer. It increases the summer after. So it's in the 16-17. It's why I still think there's a chance Enes doesn't take anything, becomes a free agent so he can play in that marketplace instead of this one. Assuming no trade happens, if Enes gets an offer this offseason that has the Jazz can easily match, wouldn't matching it force Enes to take a role off the bench? Wouldn't he automatically have a disgruntled player by our own doing? A legitimate, real question there, Andy. Absolutely, a real question that has to be discussed. It's a great point on your part, and has to make you, look into what you believe Enes's, a little bit of Enes's character. This is why you have to have high character guys all the time. All right, let's see. We're going to find Rudy Gobert here. Gobert. Gobert. Well, we may be finding Rudy Gobert. Here we go. Oh, gosh darn it. Gosh darn it. Let's do it. Player, team versus player. All right, and then we will wrap this baby up and give you the final notes here, but I think it's this should be a little bit of a surprise to people, what we just found here today. I'll tweet it out and watch the reaction here in just a second. And if Rudy Gobert's just not going to load up today, oh, he is. Look at you. Thank you, Rudy. You wouldn't want to let me down. All right. Let's get to the facts. For the season, the Jazz defense, when Rudy Gobert is on the floor, is a 102.3. When he's on the bench, it's a 109.2. Unbelievable how much better we are with Rudy Gobert on the floor. It all matches. What about the last 15 games, he says. And he looks. Remember, we were much better with Enes on the floor defensively. So we take a look at this. And over the last 15 games, when Rudy Gobert is on the floor, the Jazz defense is a 105.5. And the defensive rating when he's on the bench is a 102.7. What? The defense is better when Rudy Gobert is off the floor over the last 15 games, and the offense is better. Huh? What? What, he says? The defensive rating is 102.7 with Gobert on the bench and 105.5 with him on the floor in the last 15 games. That can't be true. That's contrary to everything I have heard. All right, let's go back to when Rudy Gobert explodes 25 games ago against Memphis till today. Half the season, split in half on a 52-game schedule. I could have dropped one more if you'd like to. And let's see what we find here. As the splits run, the hamsters run on the wheel. They run around in circles. The computer comes out. The Jazz defense with Gobert on the bench is a 101.5, and with him on the floor is a 102.3. Virtually the same, but the offense is 5 points per 100 possessions better. Chew on that to wrap up the show today. How's that for everybody? You can just chew on that and figure out what you think the Jazz should do between now and 1 o'clock. Have a good one. I'll talk to you at 12:30 with the Spreecast. See you.